Yeah, but you never buy a ticket. So, right? The second one is that one day somebody comes to your house, knocks on the door, and tells you, I'm your real father. I'm about to die.
Yes, I do.
And I'm rich.
Y voy a morir.
So all my money goes to you.
Todo mi
Yeah,
dinero viene a
right?
ti.
That just happens in the movies. Or soap operas, the ones that watch soap operas. So chances are it's not your kids as well, right? That's the second one. What's the third one?
LyfeStart.
Not yet. The third one is that you're gonna one day walking wherever in the street, in your house or somewhere, and you're gonna find the Aladdin lamp. Yes, Aladdin. Okay. You're gonna, and get your free wish. Again, it won't happen. The fourth one, and this is something that nobody loves. It's drugs and all those kind of things, but you know that's easy money and short life. But the fifth one is to work. That's LyfeStart, right? The thing with the fifth one is that you have to pay a price. And most of the people, they don't like to pay a price. They want things to come easy to their lives. So that's why they spend most of their lives hoping for the first three ones. Winning the lottery, a rich relative, or, the genie of the lamp. So, now you're here with LyfeStart. This is your time. Just be aware that you're going to pay a price and willing to do it, because it's going to be hard work. But pretty sure I'm going to see you, all of you, on the top. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for our doctor, David L. Katz.
Good morning.
Whose woods these are? I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here, to let his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it cruel to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the swing of the easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep. But I have promises to keep, miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. My friends, good to be with you here in Las Vegas. Last night I missed the party because I did in fact go to sleep, because it's 3 hours later where I come from. But this morning I'm back on the job. And we all have promises to keep. And we all have miles to go. And I'd like to take that journey together this morning, or at least get it started. And these are the mile markers of the brief trip we'll take together. We'll talk about that dark wood. We'll talk about what has been lost in translation over recent years and decades. We'll talk about the promise that we should all keep, and see if we can find the silver lining in the dark clouds. We'll consider the problem and the other problem that have forestalled our progress for far too long. We will inevitably come to a fork in the road, and as Yogi Berra said, we'll have to take it. We'll see if we can get some leverage by using the right metaphors, namely levers and levees. We'll consider an application of the big spoon, and finally, we'll end with the road and the difference. But we begin in the dark wood. And the dark wood I'm referring to is the dark wood of modern epidemiology. And in this dark wood, we could say that chronic diseases are killing people. In fact, we could say more than that, because these are chronic diseases. So before they take life from years, they take years from life. And rather than the other way around, before they take years from life, they take life from years. And we've heard from people this morning about their struggles with obesity and diabetes. And these things sap life from our years, even if they don't shorten our lifespan. Modern medicine is pretty good at keeping people alive, but it can't give people their vitality. So for a long time, we talked about these chronic diseases as the leading causes of premature death in the United States: heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, dementia, and so on. In 1993, two of the country's eminent epidemiologists, Bill Fagin and Mike McGinnis, made an observation that should perhaps have been clear to all of us all along. Namely, diseases aren't causes. Diseases are effects. And the question they thought to ask was, effects of what? What is causing the diseases that are causing the premature deaths? What is causing the diseases, taking not just years from life, but life from years? So they got their arms around all the data, wrestled them under control, and reached the conclusion that virtually all of the premature deaths and most of the chronic disease in modern culture could be explained by a list of 10 factors most of us can control in our daily lives. And the full list of 10 need not concern us here this morning, because it in turn was overwhelmingly dominated by just the first 3 entries. The first 3 entries on this list accounted for 80% of the premature deaths that occur every year in the United States and increasingly around the world. And those first 3 things in 1990 were tobacco, dietary pattern, and physical activity. Or as I like to refer to them, bad use of our feet, our forks, and our fingers. Bad use of feet, forks, and fingers accounted for 80% of all the premature death in 1990. That's getting to be an old vintage. We can refresh it 10 years later. Same question was asked again, same answer. All that had changed over the span of a decade is that the gap between tobacco as the number 1 cause of premature death and the combination of bad use of feet and forks as number 2 had narrowed. It had narrowed for one good reason, less smoking, and one bad reason, deteriorating use of our feet, degenerating use of our forks, worsening epidemics of obesity and diabetes to show for it. This then was the dark wood in 2000, but we can consider fresher data still. 2009, Earl Ford and colleagues published results of survey research conducted among 23,000 adults in and around Potsdam, Germany. They asked these 23,000 people about 4 factors in their lives. They asked them, do you smoke, yes or no? Do you eat well, yes or no? Habitual intake of fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Are you physically active on a regular basis, yes or no? And is your weight about where it should be, yes or no? And I digress momentarily just to note, because I know some of you are losing weight, some of you have lost weight, some of you will continue to lose weight, relying on Nourish and other strategies, ideally exercising, taking good care of yourself. But what we all need to recognize is that weight is not a behavior. Weight is not a choice. Nobody wakes up and decides what to weigh, right? So to the extent that weight is controlled by choices we make, those choices are already on Dr. Ford's list. Diet and physical activity, calories in and calories out. But 2 people can eat the same, exercise the same, one gets fat and one stays thin. That's not fair. So I think Christopher did a perfectly good life is right? Sometimes unfortunate stuff happens to thin people too. That may also be unfair. Right? There are other factors that influence weight. Genes, ethnic heritage, even the bacteria that populate our intestines. But I digress. Back to our regularly scheduled program and Dr. Ford's study. So they asked these 23,000 people about these 4 factors, and what they went on to do was compare the 2 ends of the spectrum. So they compared, I don't smoke, I eat well, I'm active, my weight's fine. Do I smoke, eat badly, don't exercise, my weight's out of control? These people, over the span of their lifetimes, at an 80% lesser rate of all major chronic disease than these people. Flip the switch from bad to good on any one of these 4 factors, and the lifetime probability of any major chronic disease goes down 50%. But fire on all 4 cylinders, and the lifetime probability of heart disease, cancer, stroke, diabetes, dementia, etc. is reduced a truly stunning 80%. Imagine if the news were to break tomorrow, front page above the crease of whatever you like best to read or on your computer screen. There's a new drug available, FDA approved. It's available in bountiful supply, shockingly inexpensive, stunningly free of side effects, safe enough for children and octogenarians alike, and taken once daily for the rest of your life. Will reduce the risk of you ever getting any of these horrible diseases by 80%. What would you do first? Call your doctor to get a prescription, or call your broker to buy stock in a company making the stock? Both would be excellent ideas, but for the fact that there is no such pill. And in my opinion, as a preventive medicine physician, there never will be any such pill. But lifestyle, the things we can control, are exactly that medicine. Can do exactly that. And we've known about it since 1993, at least. And frankly, Hippocrates talked about it. Anyway, if you happen not to like Potsdam for some reason, or you prefer your data even fresher, exactly these findings were reaffirmed in a cohort study in the United Kingdom a couple of years ago. More recently than that, in a cohort study here in the U.S. Essentially, we have a repetitive drumbeat in the peer-reviewed science telling us again and again and again over a span of decades of the incredible power over nothing less than our medical destinies, of the choices we make every day, the short list of factors we potentially can control. And the beat of this drum reverberates to our very pith and marrow, to within the double helix of our DNA. You may have heard that DNA is destiny. It's not so. We are now in the epigenetic age. What we do influences what our genes do. And to a greater extent than DNA, in most cases, dinner is destiny. That's good news, because we get to choose dinner, but we don't get to choose our genes. Christopher mentioned his brush with prostate cancer, which thankfully resolved itself very well. Well, here's a group of 30 men who studied by my friend Dr. Dean Ornish and colleagues, where things weren't quite so good. They did have prostate cancer, but it was in its early stages, and in its early stages you don't have to rush to treat prostate cancer, you can watch and wait. But Dr. Ornish and colleagues said we can do better than watch and wait. While we're doing that, let's give these men the benefit of lifestyle as medicine. That's what they did. An optimal, mostly plant-based diet, routine physical activity, obviously no tobacco, and then a short list of other things that really matters. Good sleep, managing stress, loving relationships. Don't underestimate the power of community in this very moment. Being part of a mission, being part of a cause, and being part of a community, that is medicine. Love is medicine. So my short list. And we could not have a better leader at the helm to convey that message, because I feel love and am overwhelmed by love as the motivation every time I talk to Christopher. The short list of priorities then for health, what we do with our feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. Fire on those 6 cylinders, after that, who cares? Right? So in any event, these men got that. And over a span of months, what Dr. Ornish and colleagues measured wasn't so much what was going on with the men. And it wasn't even what was going on with the cancer in the men. What they measured for this paper was what was going on with the genes of the men who had the cancer. And what they found is that this lifestyle intervention, taking control of health, took 500 cancer promoter genes and shut them down. Dramatically downregulated their expression, 50 cancer suppressor genes, and dramatically upregulated their expression. The power of our choices to lifestyle these medicine is such that we can refashion our fate at the very level of our DNA. And this isn't just one study, it's a whole branch of the literature. So I think the case can be made. And as president of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine now, I dare hope the case has just been made. That the master levers of medical destiny are not the tools of the medical trade. Nothing they teach me and my colleagues to carry through corridors of hospitals. Nothing at the cutting edge of biomedical advance, not PET or SPECT or functional MRI scans or robotic surgery. The master levers of medical destiny have been in your hands all along. And what we do every day with our feet, our forks, and our fingers. And you may recall what Archimedes said about a lever. Give me one long enough and I can move the whole world. Make no mistake, these levers are long enough, and should long since have served to move the whole world of modern public health and epidemiology to a better place. But, alas, we like to say knowledge is power. Would that it were so. The gap between what we know and what we do with what we know belies that wishful thinking. Much has been lost in translation. So in fact, my friends, as we convene here this morning, we consider the promise. The miles we have to go together are the miles of translation, turning what we know into what we do, finding creative ways to empower people to claim their health. And we have to do it because the stakes of the status quo are just too high. These maps show the trends in obesity in the United States. Color change is bad. This is 1985, 1995, 2010. And the reason obesity matters isn't because we all care what we see in the mirror. We do, and I think that's fine. But the reason a public health physician like me is committed to combating trends in obesity is because it's a canary in the coal mine of chronic disease. Where there is obesity, there's more cancer. Where there is obesity, there is more heart disease. There's more dementia, there's more stroke, and most indelibly, there is more diabetes. These are the trends in type 2 diabetes over recent years, in lockstep with obesity. And while we have been in the frying pan for quite some time, it's pretty clear we're headed toward the fire. The Centers for Disease Control projects that should current trends persist by the middle of this century, 1 in 3 Americans will be diabetic. Can you imagine? There are 27 million diagnosed diabetics in the U.S. right now. We can't pay the bills today. That would be over 100 million people with a chronic, costly, potentially disabling disease beginning at every younger age. And Christopher's mission, the mission of LyfeStart and of now, well, they're a laudable mission, just as they are. But frankly, much as the fate of our clients, our patients, ourselves, our loved ones are on the line, since I don't think we can pay this bill, the fate of the nation is on the line. Christopher may not have realized it at the beginning, but he signed us all up for Homeland Security. There's a lot at stake. Thus far, CDC's projection is coming true. We actually are seeing this explosion in the rates of diabetes. We're seeing a rising mortality toll from obesity higher than ever before. We're seeing a brisk rise in the rate of diabetes in ever younger people. And actually, hot off the presses this week, note the date, this is a paper that was published August 13th, a couple of days ago. 40% of Americans will develop diabetes, the CDC projects, so they were wrong. They underestimated how bad this was. And look at this, higher still in blacks and Hispanics. And of course, the LyfeStart mission has a preferential focus on the people who most need help getting the power of good nutrition into their hands, with a particular emphasis on the Hispanic population, and rightly so, because this is an especially vulnerable part of our world. More than 50% will be diabetic. More than every 2 people will be diabetic. Diabetes will be normal. You'll be abnormal if you don't get diabetes. That's the world we're looking at bequeathing our children. And as a father of 5 children, it's just not acceptable.
Amen.
We have got to turn this tide. We have got to change our trajectory. And the writing is on the wall with regard to kids. Type 2 diabetes, when I went to medical school, that was called adult onset diabetes. No child ever got it. We changed the name during my clinical tenure when it became a routine diagnosis in kids under the age of 12. Kids who get adult onset diabetes by the age of 7 or 8 will have had it for a decade by the time they turn 17 or 18. Those kids will start turning up in our emergency rooms with angina vectors and myocardial infarction. I know the case of the 17-year-old who had a triple coronary bypass. I hear from colleagues about more like him. I shudder to think the day may dawn when angina is an adolescent rite of passage alongside acne, and I say, not on my watch. And though I have been a prophet of doom on this topic for the better part of 20 years, even I did not foresee this. A 35% increase in the rate of stroke among children 5 to 14 in the United States, even as the rate of stroke in older adults comes down. And the only smoking gun on the scene to account for this is epidemic childhood obesity. Can we imagine anything more unconscionable than a stroke in an 11-year-old that a societal commitment to better use of feed and force could have prevented in the first place? This is the dark wood. This is where we're stuck, and we can't stay stuck here. In this dark wood, under these dark clouds. That was depressing, right? Sorry. That's a lugubrious way to begin to talk. I've got good news. You know, like I said, it's always darkest just before the dawn. Right? What if we look up into those dark clouds and seek the silver light? Well, the good news is it's every bit as luminous as the clouds are dark. What if knowledge were power? What if we went those miles in translation? What if we gave people, right in their hands, the opportunities to claim the health that we all deserve? Well, then I could say to you, and I can cite peer-reviewed literature to back me up, that if lifestyle were our medicine, we could eliminate 80% of all heart disease we see in the modern world. 80%. We could eliminate 90% of all diabetes. We could eliminate up to 60% of all cancer. Here are some of the citations to back me up. And I want to know, has this slide, specifically this slide, got a tear to any eye in the room? I know you're a very sensitive group. Not that sensitive, right? A lump in any throat, perhaps? Probably not. But see, these are stunning statistics. Among the most stunning in the history of public health, and certifiably true, but at the end of the day, they're still just statistics. They're dull, they're dry, they're bland, and most importantly, they're anonymous. I've worked in public health a long time, and come to recognize that the whole enterprise is encumbered by potentially crippling fiction. But you see, there is no public. The public is nameless, the public is faceless, the public is impossible to love. There is no public. There's just you, and me, and everybody else. And you're going to help me prove it if you don't mind. Let's take a look at the private parts of public health. If you or someone you love, just you or someone you love, has been touched by heart disease, please raise your hand and keep it in the air. If you or someone you love has been touched by cancer, please add your hand to those in the air. If you or someone you love has been touched by diabetes or stroke, please add your hand to those in the air. And with the exception of a couple of lazy devils who won't lift their hands up, we look around the room.
Everybody.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
So conjure to your mind's eye the face of a person you love. Remember the day. I'll be your proxy, you can relax. But remember that day you got a phone call. Yeah? So somebody you love, maybe you rode the ambulance with them, maybe you met them in the hospital, it was the emergency room, it was the ICU, it was the CCU, it was a heart attack, it was cancer, they had diabetes, maybe it was you. But it was you or someone you love, you can see that face. You can remember that day. And maybe they got better and came home. I hope they did. The reality is sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And here's the thing. If knowledge were power, if we did whatever was necessary to put the power of good health right in people's hands, if we heaved on those master levers of medical destiny a bit more often, 8 out of 10 of us in this room would not have had cause to raise our hands. That's what an 80% reduction in all chronic disease feels like. It's not remote. It's not statistical or anonymous. These conditions have invaded all of our homes and all of our families. And if we take arms against this sea of troubles and by opposing it, then we will feel it. And we're talking about the future we bequeath our children, where either these terrible chronic diseases occur more often at every younger age, or 8 times in 10 when we got those terrible phone calls, our kids won't. Those will be good days instead. The calls just won't come in. When we part the veil of statistical anonymity, the faces we see looking back are the faces of people we know and the faces of people we love. It is for them the promise must be kept, and it is for them the miles, the corridors must be traversed. And all of this, I think, begs the question, why haven't we just gotten it done already? What the heck is the problem? Something fairly monumental must be on our way. And indeed, I think something fairly monumental is. If you take this and you add this, inevitably, you get this. In much the same way as if you took this and added this, you would get this. And I give you my figurative trademark for the better part of 20 years now, the polar bear in the Sahara. And my point is not that this is about to happen to polar bears, although it probably is. And Christopher, you can invite Al Gore to the next conference. He'll tell everybody about that. My point is that we are polar bears in the Sahara. Polar bears are marvels of survival, but adapted to a very particular environment. Put them in a different one, the very things that keep them alive in the cold conspire against them in the heat. Soak up and retain warmth where warmth is scarce, it fosters your survival. Do it beneath the burning Sahara sun in summer, and it cooks your food. We are polar bears in the Sahara because throughout most of human history, calories were relatively scarce and hard to get, and physical activity was unavoidable. It did not require gym membership or specialized footwear. It was called survival, and everybody did it every day. We've devised a modern world where physical activity is scarce and hard to get, and calories are unavoidable. Houston, we have a problem, and Las Vegas, and every place else in the country. I submit to you that as a species, we have no native defenses against caloric excess, or the lure of the couch, or junk food, never having needed them before. No native defenses, that is, save one. Great big Homo sapien brains. We are arguably smarter than the average bear, and can think our way out of this mess of our own devising, and that's just what we need to do. But we have to wrestle with an additional problem. First, it may seem like we can't get there from here. And even if we think we can get there from here, it requires us to know where there is. Do we know where there is? Where is healthy living? Well, I think when it comes to our fingers, not smoking, everybody gets that pretty clear. I even think when it comes to our feet, people are pretty clear on that. We know what exercise is, and that we want to do more of. When it comes to our forks, however, we're a little bit encumbered by perennial confusion, because after all, there's a new bestseller out every week refuting everything that came out in the bestseller last week. Those guys are idiots, listen to me, all right? So folks, we come to that fork in the road. We can either remain perennially confused and disempowered, or we can embrace the notion that we are not entirely clueless about the basic care and feeding of Homo sapiens and get on with business. And I recommend the latter. And I say that as someone who's written 3 editions of a textbook on nutrition for healthcare professionals, and just recently wrote this commissioned paper, Can We Say What Diet is Best for Health? Kristen, we can give out copies of either at some point if you like. But having reviewed this literature, looked at the pros and cons of low-fat diets, the pros and cons of vegan diets, the pros and cons of low-glycemic diets, and the pros and cons of the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension, pros and cons of the diabetes prevention program diet, the pros and cons of the paleo diet, the pros and cons of the low-carb diets, the pros and cons of the Mediterranean diet, the pros and cons, no, there are no pros in between the diet. But for reasonable contenders, what really matters is not my diet can beat your diet, but what makes them all alike. What's good about all these diets is the same thing. Highly nutritious foods, foods that fill people up and satisfy them, foods that nourish. Real food, not too much, mostly plants, as Michael Palmer put it. I like to say wholesome foods in sensible combinations. And this leaves a lot to the imagination. I think that's fine, because that puts you in the driver's seat, or makes you the cook in your own kitchen. You want a vegan diet, fine. You want a Mediterranean-style diet, fine. An Asian-style diet, fine. Wholesome foods in sensible combinations. Stick with the theme. You get to choose the variant on the theme that allows you to love the food that loves you back. And that's where we all want to live. We don't want to have to choose between the pleasure that we can get from eating well and the pleasure we can get from feeling well. And I believe we can get there. But are we there? Hell no. Mostly plants? Forget about it. 1.5% of Americans meet daily recommendations for both fruits and vegetables. 1.5%. This despite the fact that orange juice qualifies as a fruit, and both French fries and the ketchup poured over them qualify independently as vegetables. So, no, we're not eating most plants. In fact, this is the typical American diet. Yep. This is a picture from a book called Hungry Planet, What the World Eats. This is a family and their food for a week. There is no way eat food not too much. Most of the plants is going to help these people at all. Maybe if we said, if it glows in the dark, step away from the box and nobody will get hurt. Maybe that would help, I'm not sure. But clearly we have to do more than talk. These people can't get there from here, so that problem remains. We know where there is. Can we get there from here? And I believe we can, and here's where I convert my metaphors from those master levers of medical destiny to a levy. I like the levy metaphor for several reasons. First, I think we're all confronting a flood of problems. A flood of highly processed, hyper-palatable, nutrient-dilute, energy-dense, glow-in-the-dark, bet you can't eat just one kind of food. A constant flow of marketing dollars encouraging us and our children to eat the very foods that propel us toward obesity and chronic disease. wave after wave of technological advances giving us devices that do all the things muscles used to do at work and play. A great big obesity-causing, disease-causing flood. And if you want to control the flood and turn the tide, you build something like the levee. I also like the levee metaphor because it incrementalizes the problem and solution. No one of us has to solve the whole problem. But every day, we're either adding sandbags or we're not. Every day, we're either part of the solution or we're abdicating part of the problem. Let's get in the game. I want to be in the game every day. And finally, I like the levee metaphor as a precautionary tale. Because we are a quick fix, silver bullet, active ingredient kind of society. We want just one thing to fix it all. And no one thing will fix it all. And Christopher knows this, and this company is committed over time to an expanding portfolio of products, an expanding portfolio of programs, and I've been engaged to help share as much information as we do highly nutritious products, because we want to inform and inspire and empower and nourish. No one thing can fix it. I've been on the Dr. Oz show many times, and in the aftermath of an appearance, inevitably, I get 1,000 emails from people who saw that segment and are convinced that's the thing. But of course, yesterday, there were 7 other versions of The Thing. Tune in tomorrow for 11 completely different versions of The Thing. And don't forget to watch next week, when every day there will be brand new versions of The Thing. Guess what, folks? There is no The Thing, right? I mean, even when you rely on products as good as ours at LyfeStart, you want to use those, and you want to exercise, and you need to avoid tobacco, and you need to sleep, and you need to consider stress and relationships, right? We have to be holistic about health. The notion that there is a thing is like putting down one sandbag and asking, is the ground dry yet? And of course, that's going to be disappointing. And then deciding, well, hey, that sandbag didn't work, let's try another. No. What we need to do is pull together and create a comprehensive array of solutions so it's easier to get there from here. And this is what I do when I'm not here working with you all. I'm a sandbagger at this stage of my career, I'm proud of it. I manufacture, test, stack, and as appropriate attempt to disseminate sandbags. And I'll tell you just a few quick examples of what I mean. I've been going into schools around the country for years, hearing that we have to jettison phys ed and recess because of No Child Left Behind. And I'd say, you need to tell me No Child Left Behind is leaving all the children on their behinds? That doesn't sound good. Teachers and administrators would say, well, I guess you could put it that way. It's cute, but please get off the premises. And we were stuck there in an unhappy place for a while until my son, Gabriel. Gabe is now 15. He's the youngest of our 5 kids, 4 daughters and a son. We actually came out of retirement, my wife's idea, to try one more time and see if I could produce a Y chromosome, which it turns out I can under circumstances I'm not prepared to discuss. Anyway, we got Gabe. And Gabe inspired this program, ABC for Fitness, activity burst in the classroom, brief structured activity burst teachers can dole out to kids who can't sit still all day. They just can't. Right? It's not normal. We take naturally rambunctious kids, send them to school, bolt them in the chairs all day long, so they can grow up to become adults who can't get off couches with crowbars.
That's right.
And if they act up along the way, we medicate them. Folks,
That's
the
right.
proper remedy for rambunctiousness in children is recess, damn it, not brittleness. Fitness is a sandbag, but I'm a scientist. I can't fall in love with my ideas after testing. We did a controlled study in 1,000 kids. Half got ABC for Fitness, half got business.